are back with yet another voice of Dean godlike thing. Leo and Kate are still here, and I'd like to welcome Davina Dawson, uh, developer, I guess, artist, and all round brains behind Rigs of Color.
Yeehaw.
Oh,
Thanks for talking with us, Davina. I'm very excited to say words about your cool project.
yes. In which you deal with the all important game development tenet of representation. Such a cool project, and so important, especially where you talk about in the video of how you want it to be continued and added on to at WPI. So I wanted to kick it off because you mentioned in your video that you talked to primary sources when you were creating these different models. And I was hoping you could talk about maybe a specific instance that influenced a choice that you made with one of the models you created.
Sure, that makes sense. I guess I have two that really pop out to me. One of them was that one of the models, Desiree, I created with another artist who did the concept art for it, and then I made her 3D. And that artist, I really enjoyed working with her because she, she was a Black artist who was able to give me input on stuff like hair and stuff like that, as much as I try to research it, I'm not going to know as much about Black hair as her. And it was really cool to get her firsthand opinions on stuff like that on the ground floor, where later with things, it was just sort of like, oh, how do you feel about this? How do you feel about that?
Love that. That's rad. So you mentioned in your video about the project, you had some struggles at the start of it, but looking at, the final product, it looks like you did a great job overcoming those struggles. So how did you go about improving? What was the process there?
The process was a lot of critique. Me sending photos upon photos to Mr. Sherry and him responding, I hate you. Why don't you know how to do art?
The classic art school tactic.
Yeah, but I mean, it really worked. The thing that I think I found most useful for actually getting my modeling better over the course of the year was working on multiple rigs at once, because I would just get so blindsided with focusing on one person that I could switch onto another one and, then not have to be in that headspace. It was very helpful to alternate between them.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
I was wondering what the process of developing these models was like, sort of more in isolation compared to working with the artists that you commissioned.
I guess in isolation, the start was going online and searching things like Hispanic character art and stuff like that, and just trying to find reference and scrolling by a bunch of them and being like, ooh, not that. And all that. And then it was deciding whether or not to interpret completely to the reference or make some changes, because some of the characters I did make changes, for inclusion and for representation's sake. And from there on, it was mainly just me and Mr. Sherry having our little echo chamber of, I hate you, why can't you do art? Okay, how about this?
Well, it turns out you can do art because it looks great.
No, I like his critique style. It's
Nancy. So you mentioned having to make changes, working with the other artists. What was one of your biggest surprises while working on this project?
One of my biggest surprises, that's
or was it all smooth sailing?
Yeah, I guess one of my biggest surprises, but this one's a positive surprise, is that it took off already on this being a repeated MQP. There's already someone registered to do it next year, which I'm so happy about.
That's awesome.
But as far as things that I didn't really see coming that were kind of threw me off course, I guess the thing that was my biggest problem in the work was being able to contend myself with what I felt like I was trying to represent and what I needed to represent for my audience. For example, one of my characters, Daya, I had a lot of debate with Mr. Sherry about whether or not I could produce her as a trans character. And that was something that I really wanted to do, but we ended up reaching the conclusion that I shouldn't because the representation was just a bit too complex for me at the stage that I was at. And we didn't want to muddy things by having me try to represent, two groups that I'm not a part of. That sort of thing happened twice, mainly with that situation and with my character Kayla, who was Hispanic and who I saw a little too much of my own personal experiences in.
Did you feel sorry, Kate, I totally didn't mean to.
No, it's totally cool. I was just gonna say makes sense. You go.
Did you feel like more connected to the characters that you identified more with?
I guess I felt more connected to the women, I think. That was something that I felt more connected to, but in that way, I didn't feel more connected depending on race, I don't think. Mainly because I think I was giving them all characters in my head. Like, I've spent this entire year seeing nobody but my partner and these characters. They are my best friends, and this cat.
Love that. So you mentioned that someone's already signed up for it, next time. To yoink our question from last time, do the same thing again. Twofer, where do you see this project going, and what are you most proud of?
I see this project getting a lot more characters, and I think what I'm most excited about with where it's going is being able to include more diversity. Like, for example, Mr. Sherry said that he didn't want a trans character in the opening group, but that he wants to add them later, and I'm like, yeah, all sorts of representation. I want that. And I think what I'm most proud of is the fact that I tried the entire time to represent people the way that we are, because I often found characters that were whitewashed of, Black characters or Hispanic characters or whoever they were. And that was something that I had a lot of hurdles where I had to jump of, maybe this shouldn't look like this.
Thanks so much for talking with us.
Yeah,
Very
absolutely.
cool.
Hi, gang. It's me again.
Hello.
So thank you, Davina. I'd also like to thank Leo and Kate. Yay! Great job. We are going to once again take a little bit of intermission while we let Davina go back into COVID land, I guess. And the rest of us go back there. And we'll be bringing in 2 new devs, surprise devs. So thanks again, Leo. Thanks again, Kate. Great job, everyone. And